nullified it. Alright, this is the first time I am watching this video. I do recognize Bernth as a fantastic player. He's very, very skilled, and he's got a lot of good information to share. So whenever I do one of these reaction videos, response things, it is never with the intent to tear anything down or anybody down. We're just going to see, do we agree? Is there any info I can add that you may find beneficial or helpful? And if we disagree on something, I will explain why. Is this coattail writing? Absolutely. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, it worked. So here we go. This video is called The 6 Worst Guitar Technique Mistakes and 6 exercises to fix them. So the worst. There are none worse than this. So yes, one of those titles, like the worst, like is it the worst? I don't know. I get it, we gotta use clickbaity titles, but man, it always bugs me when I see titles that are just like, this is the best, this is the worst. And again, you could say, well yeah, but you used the title said guitar finger exercise guaranteed to make you faster. I still believe it will, as long as you can't play it at first. But anyway, here we go.
Let's talk about guitar technique today. I'd like to talk about the top 6 worst guitar technique mistakes that I encountered both with my own playing and with my students so far. Eliminating those roadblocks will greatly help you out on your guitar journey. And in today's video, I'd like to show you some very effective exercises that will help you with overcoming them as fast as possible. Let's do this. As I'm quite sure you know already, your hands are built to grab things, and your thumb is basically the most important tool for that. It gives you the optimal support for your left hand fingers when it comes to guitar playing, and amongst many other things, it will help you with building a very efficient legato technique, for example. But all of that won't be possible if you're playing like this, for example.
His thumb is not behind the neck. You see where it is? I bet he's got to say something that I talk about, that my teacher told me. Let's see.
This is actually really hard to do. As you can see, I didn't use my thumb at all. It's right here. I've actually seen this way of playing with some beginner students in the past, and once this big mistake was corrected, it was obviously much easier for them to play. One less severe and actually quite divisive topic is if your thumb is allowed to stick out from behind the neck like that.
The answer is yes. But it also depends on what you're playing. It can be fantastic for muting that low E string when it comes to playing pedal point riffs. So stuff like that. Yeah, thumb over the top, great idea. It's great for muting the low E string when you're playing power chords up here. Great for doing stuff like that where you're going to string rake up into a bend. So there's definitely some good use for the thumb being over the top. Also, just playing something like an A minor, C major, D minor, thumb over the top, very useful for muting things you don't want to have ring out. You can even use it to play chords. So if you can actually get your thumb on that F note there, you can play an F sus2 with all 6 strings.
Or if it always should be positioned behind your fingers to support them.
Depends on the riff. I bet he's going to say something like that.
So you definitely need the support of your thumb behind your fingers for fast and technical playing like that. But for me, it's perfectly fine to focus less on perfect technique and more on the sound when it comes to string bending and vibrato. In my experience, you can't get that really expressive and emotional sound if you just work with your thumb behind the neck all the time. It also works, but it sounds and feels completely different. So I personally find myself switching between those two different styles. I place my thumb in the area around my middle finger for the fast, crazy and shreddy stuff. And it's okay for me to neglect that kind of perfect technique mindset when it comes to that kind of expressive stuff. Now here's an exercise for you that will really help you with developing that supporting thumb for your left hand fingers.
very similar to the exercise I mentioned earlier, the one titled Finger Exercise Guaranteed to Make You Faster at Guitar or something like that. It was very similar to the exercise my teacher gave me there. Yeah, like not lifting your fingers. Don't lift your fingers from the fretboard. Let's see if he goes into more detail with that.
By the way, you can download the tabs, get the profiles, practice backing tracks, and all the other files for all the upcoming exercises on patreon.com/Bernth. I upload these really helpful files for every single video.
I'm guessing he doesn't. So let's explain what he's talking about there. So not lifting your fingers off the fretboard. Woo. Okay, so he's skipping strings there. Yeah, that's a funky one. So he's going first, third, second, fourth. So you see he's got all 4 fingers down at the same time, and then you only move the one finger you have to in order to play the next note. So he's skipping strings, going from the E to the D string here. So as far as this is training your thumb to stay down behind here, I mean, I guess, well, but it really teaches you to keep your fingers on the tips as much as possible, and helps keep your fingers close to the fretboard. So that's what I was taught, just the old-fashioned chromatic thing here, where you move one finger at a time, and that really helped teach my fingers to stay close to the fretboard. His version here just adds a whole other elements of, god damn, that's a bitch. Clearly something I have not worked on. Whew. So yeah, that's how you would approach that exercise there. I know he's going up on higher frets, but if you want to do what he's doing, then you kind of not weren't following that, because that did go by pretty quick. Again, you start with his first finger, he puts his ring finger down. Now both of these fingers are down. Then the middle goes down on the A string, 6th fret. And so now you got 3 fingers down. Then the pinky goes down, 8th fret of the A string. Now you got 4 fingers. When you go to the 5th fret of the D string, only your index finger comes off the guitar and then back down. And then your ring finger's the only one that moves. Then your middle's the only one that moves. Then your pinky's the only one that moves. And so on. So if you notice you got 2 fingers not on the guitar, as you go through the exercise, you goofed up. You gotta get those fingers back down and only move one at a time. Only move the one you have to in order to produce the next note.
Video that I post here on YouTube. So you definitely want to make sure to join us over there if you want to make the most amount of progress in the shortest amount of time possible. Let's move to the next topic now. So this is obviously all about picking technique, and it was one of my personal biggest roadblocks. If you're working with your entire arm when you're picking and you completely lock up your wrist, you will encounter multiple problems. You will have issues with mastering clean string transitions. You won't really be able to feel the individual notes that you're playing or the subdivisions when things get faster. And of course, it will also be close to impossible to work with interesting dynamics if this is your default motion. It might feel like a shortcut to faster tempos in the beginning because it's easier to gain momentum when you rely on brute force. But it sounds quite terrible, and I'm already a bit exhausted and I'm beginning to sweat. I obviously got much better and more controlled results as soon as I started working with my wrist for slower tempos and with a mix of my arm and wrist for the really fast and crazy stuff.
I like how he said that. He uses a mix of wrist and arm for the crazier stuff. And yeah, like you don't want to use the bigger muscles for the slow things. Like I remember a student asked me years ago, it's like, well, if using your arm is how you play your fastest, shouldn't you always be using your arm? Like, well, no, because you don't sprint the same way you walk. It's 2 different techniques. You got slow picking technique and you got fast picking technique. So use the smaller muscles for the slower stuff for sure, and only use the bigger muscles for the faster speeds only when necessary. Try and keep the bigger muscles out of it as much as you can, but when they start to creep in order to produce the speed you need to play the stuff you want, then let it happen. But try to resist it for a while. Because like I see some people like at 120 beats per minute with 16th notes, they're already like trying to do this sort of thing. And yeah, that's too early. That's too early. I mean, at least wait till like 160, I think, before you really start having to use the elbow to help out.
but I never lock up my wrist completely and use a full arm motion like that. I don't think that this will get you the results that you're looking for. In case you still have some work to do when it comes to unlocking and using your wrist for faster tempos, I have some really cool exercises for you. Make sure to work with these really cool rhythm exercises in your next practice routine. Aside from being really effective exercises, they are also really fun to play.
Let's try that in a more metal fashion. Nothing wrong with playing jazzier chords, but you know, why not do it in a more metal way? All right, so there's a metal version of that rhythm right there. Let's get to the other one. So that's... Arm's getting tired. There we go. Metal fight it.
So this is also something I personally struggled with for quite a long time. It actually took quite a while for me to realize that it's difficult for me to stretch because of the way that I'm angling my hands when I'm playing, and not because of the size of my hands or fingers. So I'm talking about really extreme angles like that, for example, or like that really stands in the way of stretching and of using your fingers effectively. A lot of my students complained that their fingers are not long enough or that their hands are not big enough to make certain stretches and to play certain shapes. And
Yep, I hear that one often too. Nobody has the right hand size, I swear. It's my hands are too small, my hands are too big, fingers are too long, fingers are too short. It's like, yeah, you just need to learn how to use your fingers.
turned out that it was actually their technique and those extreme angles that prevented them from covering more ground on the fretboard like that, for example. When I was playing that classic 2-note per string pentatonic shape in the beginning, my hand always looked like that, and that made it impossible for me to stretch farther than that. So that's the maximum stretching that I can do right now. And in order to extend this shape to a 3-note per string pentatonic shape, I would actually have to stretch this far. And now that I position my hand like that, it's actually easy to do that. If I would position my hand like that, I really couldn't make that stretch. I can't stretch farther than that.
Yeah, and that has to do with the whole thumb placement thing that he talked about earlier. If you have your thumb over the top of the guitar like that, you're not going to be able to hit the stretches. If you have your thumb to the left of your index finger here like that, you're not going to be able to hit those stretches. So you watch what happens with my fingers as I move my thumb towards the headstock here. Like they want to collapse like that, especially watch the pinky. See how the pinky does that just to stay put? But when your thumb is in the center of your hand, like behind like your middle and ring finger, then you can hit those stretches a lot better. Much better. Because if I was to have my thumb over here, like I can't stretch from the 1st to the 5th fret anymore because my thumb's over here. But as soon as I get it in the middle, now I can hit that stretch. So yeah, get your thumb in the middle of your hand back there behind like your 2nd or 3rd finger. Usually like the middle finger is a good place to aim for. And it really helps get those stretches better.
The next topic also concerns your left hand, and this one is all about finger positioning. So first of all, you want to make sure to position your finger in this area of each fret to make the notes ring out nicely. Watch what happens when I move farther back. That doesn't sound too good. So generally your notes will sound best when you position your finger close to the end of each fret. But what might be actually more important than that is the angle in which your finger comes in contact with the string and with the fretboard. A huge progress killer is what I like to call flat fingers. So if your fingers are not curled like that, they might block the next string. And that of course will make it impossible to play really cool and interesting chord shapes because you're constantly blocking the strings with your fingers. And amongst many other topics, you also won't be able to develop an efficient hammer-on and pull-off motion because you need that nice snapping motion in order to do that. So effectively working with hammer-ons, pull-offs and tapping won't really work with that flat finger approach. So make sure to focus on finger positioning and developing that nice curl in your practice routine. This is the perfect and really famous exercise for that.
This is the one I was taught. It really does teach you to keep your fingers on the tips. Really make sure you have to have your fingers like damn near perfect in order to make sure that you get this thing right. So yeah, this one I know. This was one I was taught that was unbelievably hard the first time I did it. It felt like I slammed into a brick wall. I was like, I couldn't play it worth a damn.
Now let's talk about one of the biggest cliches when it comes to technical players, emotion and feel in the form of vibrato and string bending. Of course, it's extremely important to focus on hitting the right pitches with your string bending licks, and it's a very common stereotype that technical and fast players can't really do that because they don't work on it in their practice routines. So please help me with proving the world wrong with this by including this in your practice sessions. A very simple exercise that you can do in order to improve that is just playing those two individual pitches before you're bending the lower one to the higher one. So that way you can easily...
Very good idea. Very good thing. I do the same stuff with students when we get to bends. It's a perfect thing to do. Hit the note you're going to bend to and then bend to it. Really train the ear that way.
If you're hitting the correct pitches with your bendings. Of course, it also really helps to practice this to a backing track because you will immediately hear...
Agree with that too. Practicing your bends to a backing track, fantastic idea. I have recommended students do that as well. So 100% agree. Because if you're doing it to a backing track and you're bending strings, if your ear is good enough to tell if it's, you know, a note that fits or not, hopefully you can tell. Like if it sounds really sour when you bend the note, you probably bent it too low or too far.
If your bendings are out of tune. The same goes for vibrato. It's very common to see very excessive vibrato or barely audible vibrato and not really different dynamic levels in between. And that makes it impossible or very hard to articulate your playing accordingly to the music that you're playing over. So this probably won't be the right level of intensity for every single situation. That kind of expressive rock vibrato is awesome, of course, but it probably won't be the right choice for an acoustic guitar, ballad or anything like that. So please also make sure to focus on string bending and vibrato in your practice routines. Those are actually the perfect topics to focus on when it comes to your daily improvisation sessions. Now let's move to the last topic, probably one of the most important ones, hand synchronization. If you're not familiar with this topic yet, this is all about syncing up every single picking stroke of your right hand with the correct notes that your left hand is playing. To give you a bad example, it's very common to see stuff like that. So here I was obviously just picking kind of fast with my right hand, and I was trying to match that movement with my left hand, and I was hoping that it would align somehow. And it also didn't help that I was actually not playing a scale at all. I was just playing random notes. So this might fool an inexperienced listener, but you won't get away with it forever. I learned that the hard way at my first professional touring and live job when the drummer called me out and said that I wasn't really playing any actual note values. So I wasn't playing 16th notes or 16th note triplets. I wasn't really locking in with the band at all. I was just going as fast as I could. And now there's pretty much nothing more satisfying for me than hearing perfectly synchronized hands when it comes to fast licks and when the note spacing is also accurate. Here's the perfect exercise for you in case you want to work more on your hand synchronization skills. hand synchronization skills.
So he's going 1 E and a 2 E and. He's doing 7 and then. Let's try something here. So we start. Let's try it. Let's try a thing. Ready? I'm not. I'm scared. I'm scared.
I hope that you had a
Harmony. Okay, he said that's the perfect exercise for hand synchronization. Is it? I mean, perfect. We describe perfect. I know, I'm being nitpicky. I'm being an ass. I'm being a big old bully. Is it a good exercise for it? Sure. Anything that helps you improve your hand synchronization because your left hand and your right hand move at the same time. You don't even have to be moving to new frets every single pick stroke. Anything can be used to improve your hand synchronization. All the other exercises that he demonstrated today in his video, like the chromatic things, that works on hand synchronization too. Everything can work on hand synchronization. So what he showed here is a good one. And for those who didn't know what the hell's going on, he's basically going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So just going up notes of your basic 7 or your 3-note per string scale shapes in the key of C. So start with that C Ionian shape. Just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then back a note. And then starting on the A string within that same shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, back a note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down. Da, 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 da. And then going the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.